August to kick off a show like this, like we're doing tonight. George Whitfield rolling with Christian Hackenberg, Trevor Knight. Fellas, how we doing?
I'm living the
Doing
dream,
good, George.
Good. I'm excited to see what you guys got on this tonight. We are powered by Bet Rivers, produced by Dagan Hughes, Trevor Valise, college football playoff. I cannot wait to get in this first. Hack, I know I opened, on our pre-production meeting here, just asking about the cold up there. You said you guys were good. It was minus such and such. Now you're back up to 70. I'm glad to hear that. So that means you're back out on the hunt. Yes.
Yeah, we're out and about doing what we got to do.
But Trev, you guys are still down there skiing the streets, yeah? Or no?
No, I think I was in my bathing suit today, out getting a little sun and letting the chest hair flow. So we're back in the good weather down here in Dallas.
Okay, deal. Yeah, back down there. I'm sure you played the back nine. Played the back nine down there with everything going on down there in Dallas. Sorry, I'm distracted watching Michael Penix rock and roll. College football playoff preview. We're going to go over some other big bowl matchups, off-season news. We got the toast of the night. So if you've been rolling with us per our tradition, grab something to sip. You're going to be with us for the next hour. We got a couple big heavyweight matchups to discuss. We've been talking about them all year, or the possibilities. Everything is fixed and set now, so we're going to go into that. Fellas, first, toast of the night, favorite player, coach, thing. Hack, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so this is arguably my favorite time of the year in college football. You got bowl season. There's all kinds of fun matchups. You have a lot of momentum heading into the offseason for certain teams. Sometimes these games means more to programs than others, and I think no other program in the country arguably capitalized on this bonus game than the Duke Blue Devils. Talking about coming from worst to first here, 9 wins after a pretty atrocious showing last year. So here's to the boys down there. Maybe we got another basketball school becoming a football school. Who knows? Keeping it on theme for the field of 68. So here we go.
I love it, Hack.
Yes, sir.
It's a tough night for me once again. My Oklahoma Sooners lost, creating a losing season. 6-7 is now how they finished the season, with the loss to the Florida State Seminoles in the Cheez-It Bowl tonight. I hate losing, but I am going to give credit where credit is due, and I think it's a really neat story. My toast of the night goes to the head coach of the Florida State Seminoles, Mike Norvell. He inherited a group that was a subpar group, to say the least. In his first year, they go 3-6, miss a bowl game. In his second year, they go 5-7, miss a bowl game. And now in year 3, under Mike Norvell, the Seminoles get a 10-win season and really set themselves up to go into the 2023 year with a little bit of momentum. First bowl appearance for Florida State since 2017. I think that's crazy to think about that with the logo that they wear on the side of their helmet. But Mike Norvell, 10-win season in year 3. Toast to you, my friend.
Hear, hear.
Wow. Sounds
2017?
Sounds strange just saying that.
2017.
And those of you watching, especially the younger viewers, I know we pull high with you guys. 11 straight seasons. There was a time 15, 20 years back, 11 straight seasons, Florida State finished in the top 4. That's the reign of dominance these guys have had, unparalleled, even by Alabama. 11 straight seasons they've been out in the wilderness. Great job for Norvell. And fellas, to that point, and I'm sure we're going to get into this off-season, preseason, next season, there is a rolling momentum that whatever success Coach Prime has at Colorado puts pressure on Coach Norvell at Florida State, because all roads, as they're saying for Coach Prime, leads back to his alma mater at Florida State. That's where he ultimately wants to go. And whatever buzz, reclamation project, construction that he's building in Boulder puts pressure on Coach Norvell. But you're right, Trevor, big win for him tonight to sustain those guys. And they've been working awfully hard. My toast for the night is the game we just had here in San Diego. Drake May came out and put on a show. Fun to watch the Ducks and the Tar Heels go at it down here at Petco Park. But Drake May, not all the time are all these guys kind of meet the hype or the discussion or the buzz or however you want to say it. We just talked about a quarterback pre-show. None of us can even identify a reason why why they sing about him the way they do. But in terms of Drake May, could make a case he's kind of underrated for the type of throws, type of plays, instincts, talent, toughness. It was exciting to watch. Into Mac Brown. Tar Heels came all the way out here and put on a show, even though the Oregon Ducks won. But Drake May put on a show. Strange to raise a toast to the guy that got beat, but I'm going that way anyway. Drake May, sir, good luck to your off season. All right, shall we jump? Field of 12. We hope you guys are rolling with us. You can find us on everything. You can get your app, your gear at the store, fieldof68.shop. You can see us on all the apps. Field of 12. We're going to be going into Tennessee and Clemson. Joe Milton versus Cade Klubnik. That'll be interesting. The Roman Army and Kansas State. Alabama and Kansas State will be locking horns. Bryce Young and Will Anderson are both stepping into this game. There's a reason why that's a big deal. We'll go into that here in a little bit. Tulane and USC will be going at it. We'll have a chance to see the Heisman Trophy winner. One more encore. And Utah back in the Rose Bowl. Last year, they played in a classic against Ohio State. This year, Hacks, Penn State, Nittany Lions will come see them down here in Pasadena. But, fellas, we start with the two heavyweight bouts, Georgia and Ohio State. All last year, we called these guys the White Walkers because they just looked invincible, because they played invincible, because they were. And I watched Kirby Smart today on an interview, and he goes, this isn't last year's team. We're different. Yes, we're still tough, but we beat people in a different manner. And he also kind of gave a lot of credit to Ohio State. He said, listen, one of the most consistent programs over the last 5-10 years. He goes, that it's a miss to downgrade them for what you saw in one half of football. Trevor, how do you see this game between the Bulldogs and the Buckeyes that's getting ready to take place in Atlanta?
Yeah, I think the interviews by both head coaches said a lot today. You mentioned what Kirby Smart said. They're a very different football team. But conversely, Ryan Day got up and said, hey, nobody's giving us a shot because of the way that we played against Ohio State. So we're going to put our boots on, we're going to go to work, and we're going to come out and play the best game that we can possibly play. I think that says a lot. They both know where they stand. Georgia, the obvious favorite, the reigning national champion, and then an Ohio State team that just got punched in the mouth and is yet to be known how they get up and go back to battle. This one, as most people in the country right now, is sitting on the edge of their seat waiting for Saturday night. I am extremely excited for, specifically in the quarterback play. I think you take Stetson Bennett and the consistency that he's shown over the last several years. This gives him another opportunity in a big-time ball game to go out there and just play even keel, solid football like he's been doing for so long. Conversely, you have a huge opportunity for C.J. Stroud to step back up to the plate and hit it out of the ballpark as being one of the best quarterbacks in college football right now. So really excited for this QB matchup amongst others. But I think both teams know where they stand. It's going to be a fun one to watch.
Hack, before I just pitch the ball to you and you take it wherever you want.
Yeah.
Are the Buckeyes being unfairly or over the top penalized for one game?
Yeah. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, perception's reality, and the way that, and I've dove into the way that Michigan game turned out and the optics of it. And I think it was a completely different story than what the scoreboard reflected compared to even last year's game and what happened, right? You just look at it, you watch it, the explosive plays Michigan was able to capitalize on. They ended up coming and biting Ohio State in the ass. Like I said, I think they gave up 300 something yards in 6 plays, right? So that's very, very tough to overcome. But the vast majority of that game, Ohio State was, I'm not going to say dominating, but was beating Michigan for the vast majority of that game. And they got, you just can't let that happen, right? And good teams don't let that happen. And I think Ohio State's coached well enough to overcome that. But when I look at this matchup with Georgia, you sent over an interesting thing, George. We text pretty regularly here at the Field of 12 in our group chat, and this is the battle of the two most talented rosters in America when it comes to recruiting. You look at the amount of 5 stars they have, the amount of 4 stars, just the depth and breadth of the way that both of these programs have created cultures of competitiveness and toughness. And I really hope that Ohio State shows up the way that I think they're capable of, because if that's the case, I would not be surprised if this is the most dangerous game for Georgia in the college football playoff. I know I've been really, really high on Ohio State all year. Even after the Michigan loss, and maybe I'm not giving enough teams out there enough credit, but I just watched this Ohio State team, and I really don't think they've played to their capabilities yet. And they've got this chance. And Trevor, you made a great point about Ryan Day's perspective on it and the way that he's probably preaching, the messaging that he's preaching to his team, really since the Michigan game was, no one's giving us a chance. We're as talented as anybody, and it's time for us to go prove it. And I have enough confidence in Ryan Day and the program for them to be able to do that. So to kind of, I hope I answered that question, George, but I mean, to me, this is the most intriguing matchup of the college football playoff.
Yeah. And the most heavyweight one.
Yeah.
To your point, Hack, when we were all looking at that in our group chat earlier this week, 5-star players on their roster of the 4 teams in the playoffs. Georgia has 15 5-stars. Ohio State has 14. 4-star players. Georgia has 53. Ohio State has 52. And 3-star players, Georgia has 17. Ohio State has 16. You can't get more equal than that. Converse to that, 5-star players, Michigan has 3 and TCU has 1. That's it.
Yeah.
So yes, it's been built on teams, and yes, these staffs have done a hell of a job of development, but it's a whole lot easier and better to develop a guy that's a 5-star than develop a 2-star or a 3-star. They come in loaded.
And let's not get it twisted either, George, because I want to say this. I think this is a point that all of us will agree on. Stars, you could take them for what they mean, right? But at the end of the day, when you're evaluating a player coming out of high school, they have a certain skill set, they have a certain body type, they have certain attributes to earn that, right? Whether it's whatever 4-star, 5-star, whatever it is, if you're considered in that elite group, you have something. And ultimately it's about where you go and how you get developed. And both of these programs do a great job of doing that. So it's not just like getting a flash in the pan 5-star guys. These guys are used to developing talent like that. They're used to developing talent like that, putting them in situations to be successful and putting them in situations to be highly productive at the college level. So for me, like you said, man, when you just roll the rosters out, if both of these teams play to their best of their capabilities, maximum capabilities, this is going to be a straight up slugfest. So
I'll say this too. You look at these matchups. I mean, this is a college football playoff committee dream. The way that it kind of shaped out, if it was any of these other teams in any other positions here, right? Georgia playing either Michigan or TCU first, not near as appetizing to me. I want Georgia playing Ohio State because I think it's the best matchup. And then that at least gives you the opportunity, if Ohio State can knock off Georgia and Michigan can knock off TCU, to get the matchup in the national championship that would bring in just a ridiculous amount of money to college football. I mean, I think that I love these matchups for the semifinal, and regardless who ends up in the final, I think it's a great storyline.
Trevor, Ohio State has to do what to come out with a win in this?
I think 2 things, and they're very foundational of football, but it's been characteristic of of Ohio State this year. They've got to run the football.
Yep.
They've got to run the football so they can have a balanced attack. And then they've got to have a defense that comes out with their hair on fire. And whether that's forcing turnovers, minimizing explosive plays, or just being sound all game long, it's defense and it's running the football, in my opinion, if Ohio State wants to have a chance to beat Florida, or to beat Georgia, excuse me.
Hack, your opinion, you go the same way with that?
Yeah. I think, Jim Knowles lives and dies by the 3 ball. I've talked about it a little bit. I host another show with Josh Perry, and he and I talk about it as well. He's okay with giving up 4 or 5 explosives because he expects those explosives to be able to be overcome by the overall productivity of that football team.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't happen against Michigan, right? So I'm curious to see with this amount of time how he approaches this game. Physically, I think they match up fine. They're going to have to force Stetson Bennett to beat them. I think they're going to have to force Stetson Bennett into some third and longs, third and mid-range where he's dropping back and throwing the football, and you need to be opportunistic and be able to get a couple takeaways. And I'm just curious to see the overall game plan defensively in terms of how they approach this game. And then offensively, I think you make a great point. They have to be able to run the football, and CJ Stroud has to just facilitate to these playmakers. Some of these other guys have to step up outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. A lot of talent in that room. We've talked about it all year, but I think some of these other guys have to emerge as true threats to another team. So they take a little bit of pressure off of 18. If they can do that, I fully expect Ryan Day to have a great game plan and be able to punch and counter punch with a Georgia defense that's going to come out with their hair on fire, as they have with every game that has a bunch of light and meaning to it. They're going to be able to counter punch better so than like a Tennessee did, right? Because a Tennessee is who they were. I think this Ohio State offense has a little bit more flexibility to mold themselves and kind of react to the environment as opposed to try to force their style of play down someone's throat. So it'll be really interesting to see how those two things. So it's more of a schematic thing and how they put these guys in positions, and what they're willing to give up and what they're willing to try and take advantage of.
I agree on the flexibility part, Trevor, with what Hack is saying. They can mold. We watched them get into some barroom brawls. They got out of that Notre Dame battle. They were into a couple other Northwestern, ugly enough performance, but they were still willing to just get in the corner and trade body blows. They could get into a track meet. Question for you, Trevor. You want Stetson Bennett to do what if you're Ohio State? You want him doing what? If Stetson Bennett, a super athletic quarterback, you try to contain him. Young quarterbacks, you want to run all type of disguises and try to confuse them. Stetson Bennett, I think we had it in the chat. He's older than Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's not all about how many games has he played, just the age and maturity. Now, of the 4 guys, he's the most mortal of the 4 quarterbacks in the playoffs. But if you're Jim Knowles, what do you think he's been preaching, or what do you want Bennett to do? And you're like, if we get him to do these type of things, we walk out of here with a win.
So I'm going to look at it through the Georgia side. What do you need Stetson Bennett to do? All right. You mentioned one of them. He's an old guy. He's been in this game before in a playoff, and even been in the next one and won it.
Yep. Valuable.
So you use that maturity and whether it's your age or just your experience, and bring everybody down a notch. Calm everybody down. Be looking at it on the sidelines. I want him real active on the sidelines. And then from a playing standpoint, I don't need you to make the big play, dude. You got personnel that can make all the plays for you. Personnel nightmare for an opposing defense with the tight ends that they have and the way that they can shift out and go put their hand in the dirt and everything like that. Just hit the open guy. Simple as that. Go through your progressions, make your reads, pick the correct side on quick game, take a deep breath and make your pre-snap reads correctly, and just go out there and operate the game like you've been doing for the last 2 seasons. Don't try and be a hero now when you're back in the spotlight. So that maturity and just that, hey, let's first downs into touchdowns mentality, I think is going to be very important. Now, if you're Jim Knowles, do the opposite. get pressure on him, force him to try to make the home run play, try and make Georgia one-dimensional so that he's going to have to make plays with his feet, his arm, and everything else. Because like you said, he's the mortal one. They've got superheroes all around him. He's the mortal one. So if you want to get in his head and make him feel like he's got to make all the plays, you got a shot if you're Ohio State.
I want to roll this to both of you before we roll to Michigan and TCU. Who is your non-quarterback X factor in this game? This guy will tilt the balance for you, Hack. This guy will tilt the balance for you, Trevor. For Ohio State and for Georgia.
Hack, go ahead.
Man. Oh, that's so tough. I think Ohio State's stable in the running back room is back to full health. And I think that they're going to have to get some explosive plays. Not to take away, I really do think that defensively, Ohio State needs to be able to force Georgia. Georgia is so dependent, and even their personnel, it's so dependent on them being able to work off of play action. And that's what creates space and problems for the tight ends, because the linebackers and safeties have to worry about run responsibilities and then cover these guys who are freak shows down the field. So, let's take all that out of the way. I really think it's going to come down to offensively for Ohio State, like Trevor said, being able to run the football, be two-dimensional, pose a threat there. They have home run ability in that backfield. I with a healthy stable, I expect that backfield to be the focus for me, the X factor, Ohio State's backfield.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor?
I'll say this. I know we want to keep pointing the finger elsewhere, but the strength of Ohio State outside of their quarterback is that receiver room. And so I think an X factor is Marvin Harrison Jr. The way he's bursted on the scene, the plays that he's made. Don't try and go elsewhere in a game like this. Sure, you need to be, like we've talked about, but he's still going to need to make big explosive plays for them to win this football game. So he is the definition of an X factor for me.
That's Ohio State and Georgia locking horns here in the primetime game. The primetime game. I think they're the second game of the back-to-back 8 p.m. That'll be exciting. Can't wait to see what the ratings number is going to be on that. Just seems like all of America rolls right inside to go see these heavyweight matchups. Buckeyes draw. Ohio State 6.5-point dogs. Trevor, quickly, who do you got?
I got Georgia winning this football game. I think it's going to be phenomenal, but the experience that Georgia has, I've talked about it before, the been there before factor, if you will. That is a huge deal. Not to mention, I think that Kirby Smart has really come on the scene as that coach that has figured out the formula to repeat the guys, to buy into the system and to keep it going. So I like Georgia in this game.
Score?
I'm going to go Georgia with a 7-point win. I think they're going to score some points. I'm saying 42-35.
Oh, interesting. Hack.
God, man, this is so hard because my gut's telling me to go with the dogs. As a voice, but then I'm gonna look like a Big Ten homer. And it's no disrespect to Georgia, but I personally want to see a Michigan-Ohio State rematch for the national championship. I think America wants to see that. So I'm going to go with Ohio State, and I think it's going to be a very slim margin, might be 3 points, something like that. I do think that there's going to be points scored, maybe like a 38-35, 32-35 type of ball game. But I got Ohio State winning this game 38-35. I'm going with the dogs.
That's the exact same thing I have. Same team, same outcome. Hopefully it's a field goal and with some drama. Maybe even overtime. That'd be great. 38-35. I have the exact same thing. Ohio State wins that. Now let's go see the kickoff to the doubleheader out here out west in Phoenix, Michigan, TCU. These two kind of have these big flowing stories. Michigan, they're running it back on a redemption season. TCU is the Wedding Crashers. Here they go. Let's start right off the bat. TCU has to be able to do what? which aspect? They're a slow starting team. Their defense is like they're gamers, but they have the weakest defense of the four. And their quarterback is a vet, but he's grown a ton, probably the most growth of all four quarterbacks this season, especially given to where he started the season out. Trevor, will go with you first. TCU, we will have a real idea that the game is theirs through the first three quarters if they're able to do what?
I'm going to start with a funny here. If they're able to push a wheelchair out on the field and keep Max Duggan in the football game, I think they're in this one. That kid, I mean, what he has shown in terms of toughness, the blood, the tears, the limps, I mean, the guy is tough. And if he can make it through four quarters in this one, I think that TCU stays in the football game just based off of willpower alone. That being said, they're going to have to play their best football game. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about it. They're clearly the underdog in terms of talent. They're riding the wave. They're on the magic carpet ride, if you will. It's been an incredible season to watch. They just don't necessarily have that oomph or that firepower that a Michigan team has, or I guess prowess is a better word. They've got players, they've got firepower, so maybe that's the wrong word, but they don't have the oomph of a Michigan, and Michigan knows that. I think, similar to what we were talking about in terms of storylines surrounding the Georgia-Ohio State game, this one is very known. Michigan's the favorite, TCU's the Cinderella. Can they stick around? Can they not? If Max Duggan can come in and play like the runner-up of the Heisman Trophy, and Sonny Dykes can get this team going in the locker room before the game, I think it'll be a good football game to watch.
Hack, for it to be a great game to watch and for TCU to have that chance that Trevor's talking about, do they have to go kitchen sink mode on this? Do they have to have exotics on special teams? Well, for not to nerd out, but do they need an onside kick for no reason? Do you need a double pass? Do you have to get back in the back chapter of the playbook for this?
I think there's a fine balance, right? And you talked about slow starts. I mean, Michigan's had their spell of slow starts this year as well. So I think that's going to be a very astute point, especially with or something to pay attention to as a fan. There's so much adrenaline and so much hype coming into these games. You can hardly imagine, I think, as a normal fan sitting there, what goes through these kids' minds. And I think once the dust settles, if both of these teams can come out fast and flare, I think the first two quarters, I think, there could be a lot of fireworks in these first two quarters on both sides of the ball, mainly because of what Trevor said. Max Duggan, as long as he's in this ball game, I know it was a loss in the Kansas State game, but the fucking nuts on that kid after that performance, I got a ton of respect for him. It was very, very impressive. So as long as he's on the field for the Horned Frogs, they got a shot. But I really do think that these two teams, they have some similarities. The kitchen sink may have to come, but I think TCU has to be careful with it. I think they have to be strategic and feel it within the game. But without a doubt, I think that they're going to need some help, whether it be a special teams play, a couple of big turnovers, a pick six, something crazy like that. They're going to need some help and be able to continue to ride that momentum throughout the game if they're going to ultimately pull this off.
I agree with you. I agree with both of you. The thing I'm going to be curious about, Michigan defensively looks like they have 13 guys out there. Like, they always hold leverage. They're always in position. They always rally as a group.
It's a very sound group.
Very sound group. They don't play hero ball. Secondary has always got their eyes and hands out. Backers are always like scraping and cutting and flowing. Like they're all on a string. Offensively, Michigan is a downhill deal. And Trevor, you don't have that in the Big 12. You don't have it in the Big 12. Michigan easily will throw 2-3 tight ends in there. Here comes a fullback in there. Even though if they're, breaking and building formations and all that stuff, they're still going to find a way to come down on you at power when they're going 3, 4, 5 yards a clip and they're really in no hurry. Some of that slow start is just because they march, and they're not really a track team. They've shown some track ability against Ohio State, but will TCU, just like when I was asking Hack on just from a team mode standpoint, you got to go kitchen sink some. Will their defense have to break their typical protocol style, investing more in the box, trying to add a little bit more pressure, trying to throw things off? Otherwise, you're going to be on a set of train tracks like a train and a Ford F-150, and you know how that's going to go. They're only going to move one direction. Am I right?
Yeah, you are. You are. And that's that is the perception coming into the game. But I'll say this about TCU's defense: for it being a extremely offensive minded program, with Sonny Dykes being the offensive guy that he is, and the way that they chunk it around on that side of the ball, I've been impressed with the way that TCU has answered the bell. They don't have a good comp, right? I think the best comp that they have is the backfield at Texas, right? Which is a phenomenal backfield with BJ and Robinson and Roshan Johnson, which I think is every bit as good as any backfield in the country. But you don't have the big boys up front at Texas yet that a Michigan does, and so they have risen to the occasion when it comes to that. But this is one of those games. I'll relate it to Mojo going up against Dallas Carter, Odessa Permian, Dallas Carter, and Friday Night Lights, the movie. Obviously, one of them is bigger, more talented. They're going to walk in there with bigger size, but it's all about what kind of heart does TCU come out with, and for one game, can they give it all that they got to make it to the show? And again, they've got some pieces of the puzzle. They've shown some brightness. They're just going to have to put it all together and leave it all out there on the field.
It's going to be fascinating. I'm so excited to watch that. And you're right. Watching Max Duggan reminds you of think of any running back or quarterback. I mean, you may even have to go all the way back to somebody like Cam or Tebow, who relishes the contact, and you think he's down, but you got to invest 3 more guys to drag him down. I want to move to this. The San Francisco 49ers last 3-4 years, I think, have the most talented roster in the league, and they play the most physical brand of football in the league, weapons all over, one of the best coach teams. And then there's Jimmy Garoppolo, winner. They love him, but they use him conservatively. You guys watched that a year or two ago when they're at Green Bay. I think he only threw like 10 balls. And then another playoff game, I think he threw like 14, 15 balls, like very conservatively. But they like him as the tip of the spear. I see that a lot with how Michigan rolls with J.J. McCarthy. Winner, they love him. They use him sparingly, but they're like, listen, you're driving a tank, so we don't need you to do all this extra. No, just plow stuff over and fire when we call for you to fire. Is that a similar comp? I'm just going to roll this to both of you. Is that a similar comp, Niners and Garoppolo, McCarthy and Michigan? And what will McCarthy have to do in this game? Have to, or what will they trust him to do? Hack, I'll go with you.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comp. To me, we always say we want to see explosiveness from the receivers. We want to see explosiveness from the passing game. And even the Ohio State game, I mean, he threw a hitch and they whiffed on a tackle in cover 0, and the dude ripped it off for 80 yards. And then they blew another coverage on a corner post, and he threw it to a dude who had next closest defender was 15 yards from him. So, I'm not taking anything away from him, but or anyone on Michigan's team, they dialed those plays up and were able to execute when they needed to. But I just don't know, because Michigan really hasn't had to get away from who they are. And I don't know if TCU is the team to force them to do that, right? So for JJ, yeah, I mean, just go in there and do what you're asked to do, do what you're coached to do, execute on the plays that you're being asked to execute, which he's done all year, and just keep being who you are. And when I think the thing is, I think throughout his career, especially at Michigan, if this team stays built the same way, right, a very good offensive line, he's going to learn how to do those things. He's going to learn how to use his legs more. He's going to learn when he can be a little bit more aggressive. Maybe there's this pure progression with an option, and he sees the option and can throw the post over the top because he's been baiting that safety all day long. throw in the basic, throw in the shallow, right? So there's some things that he can do and learn and grow into. Will he do that for the college football playoff? I think he's going to need to at some point in time. I don't necessarily think it's going to be against this TCU team, though. So, for JJ, just keep doing what you're being coached to do, man. Do everything that got you here at this point in time. And then I think start learning, start going back, start watching games, and start seeing those moments when you could have taken something, or you could have gotten to this, or you could have maybe used your legs, right? That's what I'd be doing, especially with all this extra time. You're basically a pro football player right now. You're not in class. Like, those are the things that I would be doing if I was him, and if I was the coaching staff coaching him, I'd be showing him those on a daily basis. Because whether it's against TCU, or whether it's against the next team, if they end up winning this game, he's going to need to do it at some point in time. And I just think it's good for his overall maturity.
He will get called on, Trevor. Trevor, let's go back and do the same scenario we just did with Stetson Bennett. TCU's defensive staff, looking at their guys when they started bowl practice and they found out who they got. You would imagine they're saying, we need to get McCarthy into what kind of situations? If we get him in these situations, the game is ours.
Yeah, let me start here. Just looking at the quarterbacks as a whole in this playoff, two of these guys did not start the season as the starter, and they're in the college football playoff. I think that's unbelievable. And JJ
Playing
McCarthy,
each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Playing each other. I think that's unbelievable. Now, Hack, you had a lot of great points about JJ McCarthy there. And for the group of 4 quarterbacks in this playoff, he's the one that I have the least confidence in. I think everybody does. And the one that just hasn't risen to the occasion. You look at all the others, it's like, man, these guys either were a superhero or they've risen to be a superhero, and he just doesn't have that place. And we've talked a lot.
We'll pause right there, Trevor. Just pause real quick. To Hack's point, though, their brand of ball hasn't pushed the quarterback out front. It's not Andy Reid and Mahomes. It's what Shanahan and they do at Garoppolo.
Well, and that's what I was about to say. We keep talking about Notre Dame not having a quarterback in the first round. Who was the last first-round quarterback to come out of Michigan? It's been a long time.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't remember who.
Henny? Right? Was Henny a first rounder, or was he a second rounder?
Henny was second or third. Maybe Dagan's got that. It might be further. It's easily further past Brady Quinn.
That's a great point. So to that point, Michigan's never really had that superhero at the helm. And with the success that they've had, I think they understand that. So, Hack, you made a great point about going back, watching the films, making sure that he feels comfortable enough to go out there with confidence and operate the way that they just need him to operate. They're not asking him like the other 3 guys to go out there and make big plays. Stetson Bennett, we talked about that a little bit. They want him to be a game manager, but he still makes big plays.
And that's the thing, though, is Stetson, and we talked about it, Stetson being 25, he's battle tested, been there, done that. Like, he made the dumb young mistakes, and they were able to overcome it. Like, he's further along in his overall development as a quarterback within a system like that.
Right. This Michigan coaching staff is still saying, hey, we like this guy. He's gotten us here, but I'm not going to just put the ball in his hand when the game's on the line. Like, that's not the direction that we're going. And so, if I'm TCU, make him uncomfortable, put pressure on him, make him force some turnovers, make him throw into some crowded coverage, do what you do on defense to make him feel like he's playing within the trees. And force him to get the ball back in your offense's hands if you're TCU. I think that's the best thing that you can do, and obviously minimize that run game, which comes with putting pressure on your quarterback. So, shutting down the quarterback at Michigan is not going to win you the football game necessarily.
That's a killer point right there.
Because of what they do on defense and in the run game, but it still is important in terms of this matchup.
I have your answer. There's only been one quarterback drafted in the first round for Michigan.
Jim Harbaugh.
And it is Jim Harbaugh in 1987.
1987. That comes from our producer Dagan Hughes. Jim Harbaugh is the last and only first-round quarterback Michigan's ever had.
That's crazy.
That's something. That's wild. Field of 12 After Dark, college football playoff edition, just to reset this. Christian Hackenberg, Trevor Knight, George Whitfield, powered by Bet Rivers, produced tonight by Dagan Hughes. We're getting ready to go into the rest of the matchups. We got some more games to go through: Orange Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Rose Bowl. But we just want to make sure that you guys get a chance to reach in with your questions. Hit us up if you want to talk about your team or you got questions. You can find us on any app, Field of 12, college football after dark. Fellas, let's go into some of these matchups. And this is starting to become like we all need to just go ahead and get our heads wrapped around it. Bowl season, if it's outside the playoffs, it's almost like you're looking at twos versus threes versus whoever's left behind from free agency and all the rest of that stuff. So you don't really know who these guys are. A couple of these guys we do. Let's start right now with the Orange Bowl. Tennessee and Clemson will get a chance to lock horns. Now, this matchup 2 months ago, almost to the level as the first two games. Mm-hmm. We could have had that as a college football playoff. Now, both teams come into this game without their El Capitan. Hendon Hooker, horrible injury that he suffered. He's out. Now he's obviously getting ready for the playoffs. And Clemson will be going with Cade Klubnik. DJU has made his transfer decision. He's gotten realigned. He's coming out west to Oregon State. So that gives you a Joe Milton, Cade Klubnik matchup. Both have played a little bit. Milton played a lot last year for Michigan. What are your biggest impressions walking into this game in the Orange Bowl? Hack, I'll start with you.
Yeah, and this is not a knock. I think for Tennessee, it's really simple. Can they recapture some magic that Hendon Hooker obviously brought? And I think it would be very ignorant for anyone to say that his impact on that offense and that overall program, top to bottom, is going to be really, really hard to replace. So can they show some semblance of maturity in terms of being able to pick up that slack? Because it's going to be a group effort. Joe Milton is not going to single-handedly do that. He's got a role in that, but can they overall say, hey, this Tennessee program, we lost our valiant leader, we lost our Maximus, but can we, get this together and keep this thing headed in the right direction in terms of rebuilding Tennessee back to a national power? I think the bigger thing and the thing that I'm going to be watching is Cade Klubnik and Clemson's overall development, right? Mm-hmm. Because you have a young kid, another 5-star, very similar to DJ. You're talking about a program that's taken a lot of pride in homegrown recruiting kids and bringing them up within their program and their culture and developing them the right way. So are they gonna be able to say that just to say this plainly, that all that shit that happened the last 2 years was a DJ Uiagalelei problem, right? And ultimately the Clemson standard and the Clemson program has now found somebody to step in here, fill that void, and restore it. We're back on track, right? And we've done a good job of recruiting and refilling it. So for me, it's really watching Clemson and Cade Klubnik, because at the end of the day, Clemson's at that point now where you're talking about the possibility of them being a fallen giant. You mentioned the team earlier.
To recede back down.
Yeah. And you're talking about, you mentioned a team earlier in Florida State who's coming up in the ACC. I think the ACC's got a lot of every team in the ACC, every program in the ACC should be very, very excited about the opportunity that's there to grasp the control of that conference. And Clemson's hanging on by a thread now, in my opinion, to hold that crown and be seated at that table that we talked about, George, of the godfathers of college football of sorts. So I think that's where I'm really looking to see is Clemson's program and their mindset. Was it a DJ problem, or was it, ultimately a failure at Kirby, or not Kirby, Dabo Swinney and the Clemson, culture? Was that more of the failure? So that's what I'm going to be watching.
Trevor, I think that's dead on. It is going. We're going to find that out, because it really has been an indictment on DJ. Yes, they had some major offensive changes when Tony Scott left. He went to Virginia. That's who kind of recruited him and raised him. Hell, raised Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence and all the rest of these guys, Chase Bryce. but we're going to find out now. They've had a month. Cade's had a month. First time in his college football career that he's taken the practice field as the unquestioned leader of the team. Now they're going to go in here with a Tennessee team that's going to come out pretty gnarly. We saw what they can do. They don't flinch, and they do fire everywhere. Your impressions of what you would expect from this Clemson offense, more to Hack's point, and Cade.
Yeah, I think that I don't think we all realize how big of an opportunity this is for that young man. Not just to step in, now I'm the starter, I'm the clear-cut guy, but to go and play your first significant game in a game of this stature that then you have to live all off season.
Right.
And not only externally with what we all perceive in the fan base, but internally as well. This is an opportunity for him to go out there and play as hard as he possibly can and as good as he possibly can, so that each one of those guys that's coming back to that locker room to start workouts day one of the 2023 season, which is not far away, they need to be able to look at him and go, man, you're everything we thought you were going to be and more, because you showed us that in the Orange Bowl against Tennessee. And so where other guys have an opportunity to ease into it, or, you know, have a couple cupcake games when they get named the starter over the offseason, he's now the guy, and they're looking at him to be this to be the general. And so it's a lot of weight on his shoulders. That being said, I think he's got the character for it, and I think that he's got the tools to be able to get that done. I watched
he
him
played
play.
great in the ACC championship too.
He did.
Played
and
fantastic.
And so he's had a taste. But this is the one where he's got to come in and beat a really good Tennessee team. That being said, when Hendon Hooker went down, that Tennessee bubble that we were all loving, watching grow and grow and grow, it just got deflated to me. It got really deflated to the point where this Tennessee team is not near as exciting. And that may just be perception in my own mind, but Hendon Hooker was the catalyst to make this thing go. Sure, they've got players here and there, but if they were going to have an extremely special season, it was going to be on the shoulders of Hendon Hooker and nobody else. And so in this football game, believe it or not, for as bad as we've all talked about Clemson this year, I think Clemson is at least more stable from top to bottom on both sides of the ball, culturally, experience-wise, all the different things you want to talk about, than a Tennessee team who had an absolute sharpshooter lead them down this path, who's now sidelined by injury.
Quickly, I didn't get your score predictions on Michigan TCU. Hack?
Oh shit. I got Michigan winning this game 35 17 21-ish.
Trevor?
Yeah, I have a gut feeling that Michigan's going to just pound the rock, and it's going to be, what'd you say, a F-150 just moving down the tracks?
Yeah, the wrong way.
Headed.
Yeah, the wrong way. As hard as I think TCU is going to come out and play, and it may be a really exciting first half, and shoot, might be an exciting finish. I have Michigan winning this 35-24.
Now, and I got Michigan 42-24. Clemson, Tennessee, quick on the Orange Bowl. Hack, how do you see it playing out score-wise?
Yeah, I think this Clemson defense is going to show up and play to their capabilities. I got Clemson winning this ball game. The score, who knows? I know Tennessee's going to come out and push it. I just don't think they're going to be as explosive and as dynamic as they were with Hendon Hooker. So I couldn't really give you a score, but I think Clemson wins this one by at least a score, if not two.
And I go go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, I got a 10-point win by Clemson, actually 38-28.
And I'm going Tennessee 41-35. Let's roll over here to the Roman Army. Pretty quiet. And I wonder really what the statistics are for the team that's just outside the playoffs. How have they fared in their bowl game? Alabama is that team this year. They're going up against Kansas State down there in New Orleans. Those guys will be locking horns in the Sugar Bowl. Big news right there with all the kind of defections of guys saying, look, I've done it. made it out unscathed. I'm not putting on another pad in college. Alabama actually gets its two co-leaders back in Bryce Young and Will Anderson. Both those guys, Nagurski winner, Heisman winner, they both elect to come back in for Nick Saban and play. That's probably the two best recruiting jobs that Saban's done this year. Your thoughts on this? Because it's a salty K-State team that they'll sneak around, hang around. They'll catch you when you're not looking, sometimes catch you right when you're looking, like TCU. Your impressions on this game, Hack, I'll start with you.
Yeah. Trevor made this point a few shows ago. It speaks to the culture of Alabama that they don't have a single draft eligible player opting out of this football game, which is insane. You look at the fabric of college football now and how much of a norm that's become. And when you look at the type of players that Alabama has on their roster and what their futures look like, for them to be able to come say, hey, we're going to finish what we started. It may not have been the outcome that we wanted at the beginning of the year, but we're going to finish what we started. Very, very impressive. And for that reason, I don't think this football game's close. And I think, and it's not a knock on Kansas State, but I think that this Alabama team is going to come out with a purpose. And it's going to be a purpose that this team may not be used to playing with and for. A little bit more of that moral victory, but I think it's going to be one of the more important games for Nick Saban in terms of his legacy and in terms of what this Alabama team is going to be remembered for. So I think they understand what's at stake here. This might be one of the first Alabama teams that doesn't have some type of hardware coming after the end of the season, whether it be the SEC championship or the national championship ultimately in a long time. So, for me, I think that this is more of a moral thing, and I think Alabama's going to come out and prove that.
It is a big opportunity. Trevor, how do you see that? Do you see it kind of the same way as Hack? And then what would your prediction be?
Similar, but we haven't talked a lot about this Kansas State team. This Kansas State team, maybe outside of Utah and that win over USC in the Pac-12 title game, is riding a wave right now that is almost unmatched. And outside of the top four, this game might be the one I'm most excited to watch, just because we don't know what we're going to get out of Kansas State. This team just beat a team that's in the college football playoff, won the Big 12 title out of nowhere, and is quietly got some players that has some crap to them, man. Like Deuce Vaughn is small in stature, but the dude just gets it done. Will Howard's playing phenomenal football at the quarterback position. Again, should they even be in the game with Alabama? Absolutely not. But I almost compare this one to kind of how we were when I was at Oklahoma to go play Alabama. In the Sugar Bowl. Very similar type of matchup. Really didn't deserve to be on the field. Kind of a letdown that Alabama's not in the top four or playing for at all. But we had some talent. We went in there. We executed our plan, and we got it done. Do I think that's going to happen in this one? No, I've got Alabama winning this football game. But I personally think it's going to be a little closer than we all think, just given the way that this Kansas State team is riding right now.
I'll go with it. Cotton Bowl, Tulane and USC. Tulane now was flirting around with being a wedding crash for themselves. Pushed it. Got beat, I think, early November. They will see the Trojans. And USC was right there on the edge. Win and you're in. They didn't, but the quarterback still was the biggest show in the sport this year in the Heisman with Caleb Williams. Hack, will there be any drama in this game, in your opinion?
There shouldn't be. And for USC's sake, there better not be. Because, again, we talked about USC. They've been playing with house money all year. I think this is going to be a great year for them moving forward to build upon. By no means do I think that this is going to be acceptable for Lincoln Riley moving forward in terms of what they're playing for, losing in the Pac-12 championship. I think Lincoln Riley has really hammered home the point that this USC team is back. The expectation of greatness is back. And I think he's got the right people at the right key positions, a la Caleb Williams, to really drive that home now. He's got him for 2 years. So, yeah, I good for Tulane. I'm happy they're here. It's a great thing for their program. But I think you're just talking about two completely different animals. And when ultimately, when you put them in a position where they both kind of have their backs against the wall and something to prove, I'm going with the gorilla every time, and I think that's what USC is in this case.
Trevor, I'm astounded right there that Caleb Williams, with all the defections, and there's so much around him, and when you listen to the NFL people say he'd be number one in this class, he's going to go play, down in the Cotton Bowl against Tulane. But there's a football player aspect. A lot of quarterbacks are quarterback playing football. He's a football player playing quarterback. He just happens to be spectacular at it. It's impressive that he's stepping in, just like how you said about the Alabama players. Every at bat, I'm taking every at bat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that his personality and what he's shown over the last several months is that he's going to play to Caleb Williams' standard and not to anybody else's standard. And I think that's the key point to him in this USC team in this game is, hey, look, we're supposed to win. I'm the Heisman Trophy winner. I know I could come into this game and walk in here and everybody's going to be kissing my shoes and my head's going to be, this big around, but I'm Caleb Williams. And I've got my sights set a lot further than the Cotton Bowl this year. Even next year, I want to go play in the NFL and I want to go play for a long time and I want to be the absolute best. And I truly think he believes that. So I look for Caleb Williams to come out and absolutely light it up and play like a Heisman Trophy winner and not stoop down to his talent. And that makes Tulane sound bad, but you guys know what I'm saying.
It is what it is.
I look for USC to win this game handily in Dallas.
Lastly, the Rose Bowl. Obviously, special attention paid on this show. Christian Hackenberg, son of Penn State going up against a Utah team. Can the biker gang revive itself? And what will the Nittany Lions go into the offseason? What type of feel, what type of buzz, vibe, battle rhythm will they carry into the offseason after coming in here with the biker gang?
Yeah, I think this is really important for Penn State because they've struggled in bowl games under Coach Franklin. Last year they lost to Arkansas. I think the year before that they I think the year before that was pre-COVID. So I think they beat Washington, but then they lost to USC in the Rose Bowl. So there's some struggles against these calibers of teams when you're traveling in the bowl season. I think that this is going to be very important for Penn State. I think the last few weeks of the season, they quietly were probably one of the better teams in terms of consistency and coming out and playing to their potential and playing to the expectation of what that roster and what that fan base and what the coaching staff has for that program. So I think getting a win here is imperative for Penn State heading into the offseason. And then conversely, I think it's also very imperative for Utah, right? You're talking about a team that lost a heartbreaker to Ohio State last year in the same bowl game, and the Pac-12 champions this year. So I think that both teams have a lot to play for heading into the offseason. Obviously my blood and my allegiance is hoping that the guys in the blue and white can pull it off because I think it'd be really good. I think they got a great talent in Drew Allar. Overall development and overall growth as a program and development of that roster and taking that next step to competing with Ohio State and Michigan consistently. This is a game that surface value, you may not seem as a normal fan, the value in a win and what that will mean for this team moving forward. But if you look at it, this is really big for them. So I think Cliff's going to come out and give it all he's got and try to leave on a high note. And ultimately, I think the rest of that roster is going to play for guys like him and the younger guys are going to understand the standard and the legacy that he left and the direction the program needs to go from here. So,
Trevor, 50-yard field goal, no time left. Penn State pulls this off, yes or no?
Penn State does pull it off, but if I'm USC and UCLA, I'm watching this game very closely because I think it's a benchmark for what they're about to get in here in the next couple of years.
Without a doubt.
That was our college football playoff preview. We've been waiting all year for this. For Trevor Knight, Christian Hackenberg, Dagan Hughes, Trevor Valise, who's single, ladies. I'm George Whitfield. Enjoy the games. We'll see you after. We're out.